Hey guys, so in the last video we installed Devvit and we created our first app. We didn't do any coding, we just created the app. And in this video we're going to get into the coding, but if you haven't already installed Visual Studio Code, so you can just find this by searching Visual Studio Code on Google, download it and then install it. And now let's look at what we have set up already. So we have this Devvit app that's already running on our subreddit, and we have the menu thing to launch it, to create a new post. But you'll notice that there's some default stuff here, like the name here and the add my post button that's up there. So let's look at how we can change the text of those things. So if we go to our project, we need to open this in Visual Studio Code. And there's a few ways of doing this. We can just drag this folder onto the Visual Studio icon on the desktop. But we can just click into this and then right click and open a terminal. And then we just type code and then a dot. The reason why I do it this way is because it's easier. And also because now we have this terminal open back here that we can run the playtest on. So let's do Devvit playtest and then the name of our subreddit. Remember, we had to have installed this on the subreddit already, and we did that in the last video. So if you guys haven't done that yet, go check it out. So we just have to wait for this to run now. And while this is doing its thing, we can just head back and work on the code. So in the code here, there's a few files that we can see on the left here, but the only one we're really going to be focusing on is in this src folder here. There's a file called main.tsx. And this is basically all of the code we have in our app right now. So we can see there's two functions here. One is add menu item and the other is add custom post. And if we look inside of add menu item, we'll see that there's a add my post label here. So if we change this, let's just call it YT tutorial. And if we save this, we go back to our terminal, it should be rebuilding our app. While you're in playtest mode, it will rebuild every time you save something in the file. So now it's done when we get this green link here. So if we head back to the website on Reddit and we refresh the subreddit, we should see that up here it now says YT tutorial instead of add my post. We still have an add my post button. That's just because there's other apps on this subreddit. But now we know how to change the text of the button here. So another thing we might want to change is the text in this post. So we don't want it to say my Devvit post here. And we can change that on this function down here. So it's just doing await reddit.submit post, which is what we want to change, the post that it's submitting. And here we have a title that says my Devvit post, which is the title we want to change. Now if we change this to something like YouTube tutorial and we save this, it's not going to update immediately. The reason why it won't do this is because the post is already submitted. So let's just wait for this to finish, and if we go back and refresh, the post is already submitted. So changing the code won't change a post that's already submitted. So let's click up here and delete this post. Okay, let's click on this X because I am the moderator of the sub, and you do need to be the moderator of the sub to put your app on it. So now let's click on this menu up here. We'll do YT tutorial. And now we can see the new title of the post. So now that we have all of that set up, we can start working on an app. Okay, so now we have everything set up, and we're going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and in the src folder we're just going to right click and select new file, and we're just going to call this my app.tsx. Now you do want to keep most of the file names lowercase, but inside of the file you want to name the main function with the uppercase. And I'm just going to show you what error that causes if you don't name it with the uppercase. So for now we'll just do import Devvit up here. And this is something you need to do on all apps. It's just to gain functionality, gain the functions of this Devvit class, which are like all of the features we get here, like the buttons, the images, all of that. It's all in this Devvit class. And then we just want to create a function here. So we'll do function my app, and just the standard function things. We want to open and close the brackets and then add these curly braces. And then at the bottom here we want to do export default and the name of our function. So if we save this, now when we go back to the main file up here, we should be able to import that my app. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. We've created the function called my app. We're exporting it here, and then we're importing it on the main file, because the main file is what's going to be running. And down here in the add custom post thing, this in this return value here, that's where the actual like interface of our app is. So if we look here, we have the image up here, followed by text which says click counter on it, and then we have a button that says click me. So if we go back to our app, we can see there is an image up here. It says click counter, and then there's a button. So this return function is what's handling what's being displayed on the screen. And if you've worked with React or something before, you'd already know how this works. But anyways, we just want to delete what's in here for now. We're not going to be using any of that. And up here there's something called counter. We don't really need this. That was just counting how many times we click the button. And let's just neaten this up a bit. So now we should be able to add a tag called my image or my app, which is what we created here. But you'll notice that now there's an error, and there could be two problems for this error right now. One is we're not returning anything in this function, so let's just return a button, or let's just return text. And we'll just say my app. Okay, so now we're still getting an error here, and that's because when we name our function we have to start it with an uppercase. So I'm just going to change this, and now we need to change the import up here from lowercase to uppercase. And we need to change the tag that we put down here. And you can see now that that error goes away. So that's why we always need to name the function inside of our apps with the uppercase, and then we can name the file name with the lowercase, or really whatever you want, as long as the function name starts with an uppercase. So now if we refresh the page here, I'm just going to click into this post so that we always have it at the top. you can see that it says my app here, which is what we added in our myapp.tsx file. So now you may be wondering how I knew to add this text tag up here. And basically, if we go back to the Reddit docs, on the left here you can see there's this interactive posts drop down, and then there's this blocks drop down here. So in here it shows you the different blocks that you can add. Text is what we just added, and then there's stacks. A stack is basically if you... Okay, so I'm just gonna make a small demo here to show you what I mean. When we use stacks, there's two types of stacks. One is called a V stack and one is called an H stack. And if we go into our main file, you can see that there's a V stack here by default. And that's just what we put our blocks inside of. So what this actually does is if we use a V stack, it stacks all our elements vertically, so like this. And if we use an H stack, it will stack them horizontally like this. So this is useful, for example, if you wanted to make a menu at the top of your screen, you can use a H stack. And then if you wanted to use a menu that goes down on the screen, you could use a V stack. But basically everything should be just wrapped in either a H stack or a V stack. And we're just going to use the default V stack that was in the app to begin with. So let's look at a few more blocks here. We have text, which is what we just saw. And then we have icons, buttons, and images. You should already know what that is, I guess. And then there's spaces and colors. So there's not a lot of blocks here, but there's a lot that we can do with the blocks that they do have. So let's just click into text here to see what we can do with it. And you can see that we can do a few things to affect the style. We can change the size, weight, or color. And if we scroll down a bit, we can see the different sizes that we can add. We can have anything from extra small to XXL. So let's try and do this now. We just want to go back to our app and we want to add a size property here. And let's just set this equal to XX large. And we want to save this and wait for it to compile here. Okay, and once that's done, let's head back to Reddit and refresh this. So it should have changed the text size here, which it did. And basically going to this developer docs and looking at the blocks here is how you figure out what you can do to each of the blocks and what blocks they are. But for most of the stuff that you build, you're just going to use the text block and the buttons and images. So now that we know how to change this, the icons and the text and stuff inside of our app, let's look at how we can actually add functionality to the app. But we're going to do this in the next video. And by the way, Devvit uses a TSX file, which is TypeScript, not JavaScript. So in the next video, let's look at some TypeScript.